Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Nun in Zbachim, as we learn for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. We're at the 15th line down on daf Nun Amar Aleph. The 15th line, Dover Lamed B'Gzeira Shava Mao Shalom B'Gzeira Shava. Now, Behekish rather, meaning if you're looking at the chart, you have a chart in front of you. We're looking now at the third column. Yesterday we covered the second column. I'm counting the header columns and rows also. If you don't count the header columns and the header rows, so yesterday we dealt with the first column, Davalam the Hekesh, Maushim the Hekesh, no. Maushim Gzeira Shava, also no. Right? And Maushim B'Kavachomer, yes, can. And Maushim B'Yav, lo Nifshita. Now we're going to deal, today, Mr. Shem, we're going to deal with the second and third columns. If you count four columns, the first column beginning, Davalam the Hekesh. Second column, Davalam Gzeira Shava, third one, Kavachomer, fourth one, Binyanav. Yesterday we covered Davalam Behekish, what happens in all four cases afterwards. Today we're going to cover the next column, Davalam Gzeira Shava, and Davalam Kavachomer. So at the 15th line, Davalam Gzeira Shava, again, we're going to say, can you go from, to say it simply, I'm going to say, can you go from Gzeira Shava to Hekish? Meaning, if you learn out A to B by Gzeira Shava, can you learn out B to C with a Hekish? Can you go from Gzeira Shava to Hekish? Amar Papa, yes. Bezos Torah Zebach HaShlomim. Pasuk says, these are the rules for a Shlomim. Imal Toda. It teaches you that a Toda is like a Shlomim. Lamanu Toda, Shabam and Amaser. This teaches you that you can give a carbon Toda when you have to give a Thanksgiving offering. That was that was the original way that they bench Gomel. You gave a carbon Toda, right? Today we bench Gomel because we can't bring a carbon Toda. So, can you bring that from Meiser Sheni? You have Meiser Sheni money, let's say, or money that you're bringing to Yerushalayim. You can bring a carbon Toda from that money. How do we know that? Because it says Toda is like Shlomim, Zevach Toda Shlomim. So again, something is like Zerah Shava. Can you learn that out to a Hekesh? Yeah. Why? Because the Hekesh is Shlomim is Mukash to Toda, which is really a kind of a Shlomim. And this teaches just like Shlomim, you could bring a Shlomim, Menashkim Shlomim to also in Meiser, just like you find that Shlomim can come from Meiser Sheni money. Shlomim Gufa. So therefore, Toda can also come from Meiser Sheni money. Why? Because the Hekesh, the second thing it's learned out, that Toda is like Shlomim. But how do you know that Shlomim itself you can bring from Meiser Sheni money? Shlomim Gufayim and Olam. The Chsiv Sham. It says Sham by Shlomim, and it says Sham by Meiser Sheni. So it teaches you can bring it from Meiser Sheni. So here you have Gzeira Shava, Sham and Sham. That's your first thing, and from there you can go to the Hekesh. So Davalam Gzeira Shava, Hekesh. So Papa says yes. Amalei Marzutra, Braid Rav Mori, the Ravina, but Meiser Dagan Chulin. You're learning it from Meiser Sheni. That's Maser of grains. That's Chulin. The whole chart, the whole issue that we're discussing over here, can you go from one to another, is only by Kachim. And Meiser Dagan, that you're learning it out from, the original Gzeira Shava, is Chulin. All right, Meiser Dagan Chulin Yamu. Amalei, Amar Mamra Lamed Kadosh Lamed Kadosh. Who says, here's the basic machlokas we mentioned before. Who says that this rule about going from one to another, Hekesh to Hekesh, or Gzeira Shava Hekesh, who says that the original thing also has to be Kachim? Even if the original thing here is Chulin, like Maser Dagan, it doesn't have to be that way. The Lamed could be Kodesh. So the thing that we're learning out is what? We're learning out Shlomim from Meiser. Even though Meiser is not Kachim, but Shlomim is. That's all you need. Who says Lamed Kodesh and Lamed? Who says that as Marzutras apparently held that both in order for these rules to be effective and limiting in some way, both have to be Kachim. The thing it's learning out, A and B and C must all be Kachim, according to Marzutra. But according to Rav Papa, no, not necessarily. The key is the thing that you're learning out. So if B is Kachim, even if A is Chulin and B is Kachim and then C is Kachim, it can work. So that's the machlokas over here. So according to Rav Papa, Davalam Gzeira Shava, yes, you could learn out. You can go from Gzeira Shava to Hekesh. According to Marzutra, you have no such proof. So according to Marzutra, it's not proven. So if you look now at the chart, again, if you're looking in the middle column on the page, it's really the second of the issues because the first column is headers. Papa, yes, it works. Torah Bami Meiser. According to Marzutra, we have no proof. We have no proof because according to him, you don't have kachim. You don't have A, B, and C all being kachim. A, B, and C are kachim, but A is not. Therefore, you can't prove this question of Davalam Gzeir Shav Mashal Mehekesh by kachim. The next back in the Gemara. Davalam Gzeir Shav Mashal Gzeir Shav. Can you go from Gzeir Shava to Gzeir Shava? So if you look at the chart in the same plus, we see here that it also seems to be a machlokas, right? Right, because it's not so clear. According to Rambam, it is. According to Rava, what's the Gzeir Shava here? We're going Gzeir Shava. Rambam tiny like this. When it comes to korban mincha, it says solus morbeches, a poached or soaked flour. Lamad, that's how you bring one of the kinds of mincha offerings. Lamad levucha shabah solus. It teaches you that a soaked mincha, meaning soaked flour, has to come from fine flour, solus, not kemach, which is coarse flour, but fine sifted flour. Okay. Chalos minayin, how do we know that if they come in the bread forms, meaning like matzah bread, how do we know also that has to be? Talmud Lomer chalos, in the same pasuk that talks about that, in Vayikra Zion, pasuk Yud Beis, it mentions all those things, right? So it's so it says chalos there twice. That teaches you that the chalos also have to come in this form of solus. What about wafers? What about like a wafer? When he says chalos here, he means really like matzah breads. Rekikah is wafers, menayin, tamalomer, matzos. Okay, so we have two Gzeir Shavas here. Gzeir Shava from Revucha, where it says solus merbeches, teaches you that chalos also have to be away because it says chalos, and then Rekikin because it says matzos and matzos in the pasuk. Rekikin matzos mushuchim b'shaman. It says matzos by Rekikin, and it says matzos before. So therefore, we know we have Gzeir Shav. Amalei Ravina mimai de matzos michalos gomer. How do you know that you learn out matzos from this pasuk where it talks about matzos by Rekikin matzos mushuchim b'shaman and matzos by chalos matzos mishushim b'shaman? Maybe, and that would be indicating that we're going Gzeir Shava to Gzeir Shava. How do you know that? Dilma me'afatana gomer. Maybe back in the beginning of Vayikra, in Perek Beis, where it talks about mincha over there it's talking about mincha that's oven baked, mimafatanor, and there it says beferish that's solus. It's got to come from solus. So maybe that's how we know that it's not the matzos that from the very pasuk of Rekiki matzos, Meshuchim Shema, learning out from chalos matzos from that pasuk, which would indicate you can go Gzeir Shava. Maybe it's from the matzos that it says Memafatana back in Perek Beis, and then it's going directly. It's not Gzeir Shava. You're simply learning out that. How do you know that Rekikin, that wafers also must come from solus? Because by Mafatana it says matzos and it says solus befavorish there too. So here too. Elo Amarava. So Rava says, you know what? How do we know Gzeir Shava to Gzeir Shava works? From a different Rasha. The Tanya V'kirba Pasha V'hotzi. It says by the Parko Mashiach, which is again one of the parmas roughim that have to be burned totally. It says you take the innards and its dung and you take it outside of the machan. It takes it outside of Shalom. Lamed Shemosiyah Shalom. You've got to take it out totally because if you cut it up first, obviously the dung and the innards would fall out. I think when you burn it, because it's parma stuff there, got to be burned. I'm just to be burned also in one piece, like one whole piece. You don't cut it up. Nemerkan Rosho Krov. Here it says Rosho Krov again by the Parham by Parkom Mashiach. It says Rosho Krov al Rosho al Krov, and then it says Votzio. And by Ola it says Rosho Krov, right? The head and its legs. Just like over there, it's by cutting it up, because by Ola you have to cut it up. It says Nitua Hefshit Nituch, it's got to be skinned and cut up. So just like there, it has to be cut up. Afkan Al Yetuch. In other words, so the Parko Mashiach is removed in total from Yerushalayim in one piece, and there and when it's removed, it's cut up. Imalam of Hefshit, but wait a minute, by Ola it's also skinned first. Afkan Nami Hefshit is also be skinned. Says Talmud Lomer, the Kirbo or Pirsho, its innards and its tongue. My Talmud, how do you see from there that it's not, doesn't have to be skinned? Amar Papa Kashem Shapir Shabikirbo, just like the dung is inside, Kach Besoro Ba'oro, the basar is also in its hide, in the skin, so you don't skin it first. Okay, so that's how you do with Parko Mashiach. Vitanya, okay, so that teaches me that the Parko and Mashiach, when it's burned, it's removed in total from Yerushalayim. That's what, because it says V'kir Posho V'hotzi. It says V'kir Posho, and then the next pasuk begins V'hotzi right afterwards. Then, but it's cut up first based on a Gzeira Shava from Ola, and that's our question now. Gzeira Shava, can you go Gzeira Shava? Vitanya, continuing on the second Gzeira Shava. Vitanya, the last line on the page on Nun Amud Aleph. Rebbe Yomer Nemakan or Baso Parish. Here it says the hide and the flesh, uparash and the dung, the never lahalan. And it says over there, now what is Khan and lahalan? So Rashi tells us lahalan is Baparko and Mashiach. That's what we're talking about. And Khan is par Vasar of Yom Kippur, Ma lahalan aidei nituach, just like we just explained before. That how do you know that the Parko and Mashiach has to be burnt once it's cut up? It's first cut up into pieces, right? It's just, it's sliced, it's cut into pieces. Just like over there, it's nituach shelo b'hefsher without skinning, because we said it says it's got to be roast, because the pasuk says pirsho b'kirbo, the same way the basar has to be b'kirbo, so you don't skin it, you just cut it up. Afkan over here also, by the par and sor of Yom Kippur, also has to be that way. Afkan nituach shelo b'hefsher, it's also got to be by cutting it up without hefshit. So this is Gzeira Shava. The first Gzeira Shava teaches me that what? That just like by Ola, it says Rosh Krov, and it's got to be cut up, the same thing. The Parko Mashiach has to be cut up. And then the second Gzeira Shava teaches me from where? From Parko Mashiach, which was learned out from Ola, teaches me Gzeira Shava to the Par and Sar of Yom Kippur. So this completes. Now we're in the if you again and look in the middle box on the chart, Davalam Gzeira Shava. Can they learn Gzeira Shava? Yes, Ram Chama says from Solas Birakikan. And Rabba questioned that maybe that's not really Gzeira Shava, maybe it's simply one Gzeira Shava. So Rabba said, Nituach shelo lehefshit, you learn out from there that it's got that the I guess Ola is cut up and then burnt. And the same way we learn that the Parko Mashiach is cut up and then burnt. And from Parko Mashiach we teach Gzeira Shava to Par B'sar of Yom Kippur. Now we're at the third line in the Gemara on Daf Nun Amud Beis. Now we're going to get to the next question of this. Now we're going to start. We're up to well, if you look at in the whole chart, if you count 5 lines and 5 columns, we're in the middle column in the 4th line. Something that's learned out of a kal v'chomer. If A to B is Gzeira Shava, can B to C be a kal v'chomer? Now, the Gemara here is going to be full of kal v'chomer. So it says, how are we going to know that works? Not based on this pasuk or that pasuk. Something that's learned out of Gzeira Shava. Can you go teach that now to be? Can you go from Gzeira Shava to kal v'chomer? So he says, yes. How? Via kal v'chomer. Via a very kal v'chomer. Uma hekesh ena malam v'hekesh. What we saw yesterday. From hekesh you can't go to hekesh. If A to B is via hekesh, you can't go to B to C by hekesh by kachim. Even Ravina, either from Rava's Rasha or from Ravina's Rasha. Right, but even though Hekesh doesn't go to Hekesh, Malamed b'Kal v'chomer, but you could go from Hekesh to Kal v'chomer. Again, if you look at column number 2, Davar Hekesh, column number 3, the 4th box on that page, right? What am I say? Column number 2, right? Column number 2, Davar Hekesh. Can you learn to Kal v'chomer? Yes, we saw that, right? So again, even Ma Hekesh, even though you can't go from Hekesh to Hekesh, but you can go from Hekesh to Kal v'chomer, as we saw in column number 2. I'm reading columns as if there's 5 columns and 5 rows, so it's all complete. Don't think about headers, right? So in column number 2, row number 4 tells you that Kal v'chomer, that Hekesh can go to Kal v'chomer. So here's our Kal v'chomer that we're learning now. Hekesh can't go to Hekesh. But it could go to Kal v'chomer, the Tan Rabbi Shmuel, like we saw yesterday, Gzeira Shava, Gzeira Shava, which could go to Hekesh, Min Rav Papa, like we saw based on Rav Papa on Ralph. It wouldn't work according to Mar Zutra, who questioned him, but according to Rav Papa, who learned it out from Maser, Sheni, and Shlomim and Toda over there, because he held, Rav Papa says the A does not have to be Kachim, they can still learn out that way. So again, again, Rav Papa said on today's daf the Gzeir Shava, you could go to Hekesh based on that. And Adin Shetaman B'Kal V'chomer. Again, what's the Kal V'chomer now? Marach Hekesh, which can't go to Hekesh, but could go to Kal V'chomer. So Gzeir Shava, which could go to Hekesh, certainly should go to Kal V'chomer. So that's where he says, and that's why he comes out Ken in column number 3, row number 4, Mikal V'chomer Mehekesh. That's what we say. So you could go from Gzeir Shava to Kal V'chomer based on what? Based on this Kal V'chomer. So Anich Laman Dis Rav Papa. That's fine if you hold Rav Papa. That A doesn't have to be Kachim as long as B and C are. Elaman de Lesser Rav Papa, Micah. If you don't know Rav Papa, what are you going to say? You don't have that Kal V'chomer anymore because you don't have what? You don't have Gzeir Shava. You don't have Gzeir Shava going to, right? What are Rav Papa? You don't have Gzeir Shava going to Hekesh. Our Kal V'chomer was if Hekesh doesn't go to Hekesh. But what? But it still goes to Kal V'chomer, right? So Gzeir Shava, which goes to Hekesh, certainly can go to Kal V'chomer. But Rav Papa, that's only if you hold a Rav Papa. If you don't have Rav Papa, Gzeir Shava doesn't go to Hekesh. Michael Maimer. Ela Kal V'chomer, the Elam's a different Kal V'chomer. To teach me that Gzeir Shava can go to Kal V'chomer. Uma Hekesh, ain't a malam in Hekesh. Hekesh doesn't go to Hekesh. Even Rav Meir Shapiro malam Kal V'chomer, again, Midatan Rishmol, that part's the same. Gzeir Shava hamamelamedes v'Gzeir Shava. A Gzeir Shava which can go to Gzeir Shava, Chaverta, Midrami Barchama, and on the side he says, even Rabbi Chama, even Rabba. We say Gzeir Shava because the last thing we learned was Gzeir Shava can go to Gzeir Shava, either Rabbi Chama's Rasha from Mincha or from Rabba's Rasha of the cutting up and the burning of all of them, Ola and Par Kol Mashiach and the Par of Yom Kippur. So Gzeir Shava, Gzeir Shava. So here's this Kal V'chomer again. Ma Hekesh doesn't go to Hekesh, but can go to Kal V'chomer. Gzeir Shava can go to Gzeir Shava, its own Gzeir Shava, either from Rav Chama or from Rava, should certainly be able to go to Kal V'chomer. Should certainly be able to. She'll tell me. Should certainly be able to go to Kal V'chomer. Now, Hekesh can't go to Hekesh, but can go to Kal V'chomer. Gzeir Shava, which could go to Gzeir Shava, should certainly go to Kal V'chomer. These are, you can slug up these Kal V'chomers, but that's what he says. So basically, all this is being learned out of a Kal V'chomer. Double Gzeir Shava, can you go to Kal V'chomer? Yes, based on a Kal V'chomer. The next one, Double Gzeir Shava, Ma'asham Binyanav Teku. That's the last row in column number 3. Double Gzeir Shava, can you go to based on Gzeir Shava? Can you go comparison? Teku. We don't have any answer to that. That's not solved. All right, next one, Double Kal V'chomer, Ma'asham Hekesh. Now we're in the 4th column. Something you start off with a Kal V'chomer. Can you go to Hekesh from there? So how are we going to say that yes? The answer is yes, at least according to our Papa. Kal V'chomer. Based on a Kal V'chomer, we're going to say that Davar Kal V'chomer can go to Gzeir Shava. What's a Kal V'chomer? Uma Gzeir Shava. Shein L'meida B'Hekesha. Marach Gzeir Shava cannot come after a Hekesh. Again, a Hekesh cannot go. Shein L'meida Me'Hekesha. Right? Hekesh cannot go to Gzeir Shava. Rabbi Yochanan. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan disproved that concept. We wanted to prove it, but Rabbi Yochanan disproved it on yesterday's daf. Right? First, he wanted to bring a proof from the case of Mitzorah where it spreads out, the Mitzorah spreading out, and he said, number one, that's not kachim, right? Here we're talking about kachim, and here it doesn't work based on the fact because if it would work, you could just say kachim. You don't need a pasuk by Asham to tell me that it's Safon. You can learn off from the Gzeir Shav of Kachim, Kachim, but it says both by Chatos and by Asham. So therefore, we're going to see now that's what we say now. That's the Kal V'chomer to tell me that we're starting again. Double on the Kal V'chomer Ma'asham beHekesh. Says Kal V'chomer Gzeir Shava Shein L'meida B'Hekesh. Hekesh cannot go to Gzeir Shava from Rabbi Yochanan. Malamed beHekesh, but Gzeir Shava could go to Hekesh again. Hekesh cannot go. Gzeir Shava cannot come from Hekesh. And Gzeir Shava cannot be C, right? But it could be B, right? It could be B. If something was learned out of Gzeir Shava could be teach the Hekesh, Melamed beHekesh Midrab Papa, based on what Papa said on Aleph. Kal V'chomer ha'alamed beHekesh, Kal V'chomer, which could be learned out from Hekesh. In other words, the Hekesh can go to Kal V'chomer, Midatan Reishmol, and Adin Shilamed beHekesh certainly should be able to go to Hekesh. So that's if you hold the Rav Papa, that Gzeir Shava could go to Hekesh, like we said. Elaman the lesser Rav Papa Michael Maimer Teku. So according to him would be a Teku, and that's the first, the second box in column number 4. According to Rav Papa, yes. Kal V'chomer Gzeir Shava. According to my research, would be Teku. Because Mazutra says you don't know that Gzeira Shava can go to Hekesh, because over there the first Gzeira Shava A was Chulin, and therefore he doesn't hold of it. Whereas Rav Papa says you don't need A to be Kachim. It's enough if A is Chulin and B and C are Kachim. That's good enough. So according to Rav Papa, that's solved, right? Kal v'chomer can go Hekesh based on this Kal v'chomer. Again, Kal v'chomer ma Gzeira Shava she'ein l'meida b'Hekesha. Gzeira Shava cannot come after a Hekesh. Hekesh cannot go to Gzeira Shava. But Malamed b'Hekesh, Gzeira Shava could go to Hekesh, but Rav Papa, Kal v'chomer, which could be learned from a Hekesh. Sometimes you can go Hekesh to Kal v'chomer from Tanur Yishmael, certainly should be able to go to Shalamed b'Hekesh, certainly can go to Hekesh. That's only if you hold a Rav Papa. If you don't hold a Papa, it's a Teku. The next one, Davar Lavim Kal v'chomer Ma'ashim Gzeira Shava. If you're lost here on the page, we're even with the word Gilyon Ashas on the side of the Gemara and a little bit above Tosas Divrei Masler of Yehuda. Now we're up to the third box in column number 4. All right, in column number 4. Our question is, can you turn from there to Gzeira Shava? So again, he says yes, based on Kal v'chomer. Uma Gzeira Shava, she'ein l'meida b'Hekesha. Again, Hekesh cannot go to Gzeira Shava, mid Rabbi Yochanan. But Malamed b'Gzeira Shava, right? But Malamed b'Gzeira Shava, mid Rabbi Yochanan, Gzeira Shava could go to Hekesh, right? That was what said. Rabbi Yochanan said that on a mouth. Gzeira Shava. No, that's Mount Shem Gzeira Shava. Gzeira Shava get Shava again. It's taking Kal v'chomer Ma'ashim Gzeira Shava. So Kal v'chomer Ma Gzeira Shava she'ein l'meida b'Hekesha. Hekesh cannot go to Gzeira Shava. But Gzeira Shava could go to Gzeira Shava from Rami Bar Chama, either Rami Bar Chama or Rava's Rasha from the cutting up and the burning of the animals. Rami Bar Chama, Kal v'chomer Alamed Hekesh, Kal v'chomer which could come from Hekesh. You can go Hekesh to Kal v'chomer, the Talmud Shmuel, like we saw yesterday. And it didn't should come to Gzeira Shava. It certainly should go to a Gzeira Shava. So therefore, we have a Kal v'chomer teaching me that Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer can go to Gzeira Shava. Okay. Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer Ma'ashim Kal v'chomer. Now we're on the last one. Okay, so we saw the first one, we saw that in column number 4, Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer can go to a Gzeira Shava, right? It can go to a Gzeira Shava. I'm sorry, that's row number 3, the second box in that. Now we're going to go to the not the second box, it's the third box, depending how you count. I keep mixing up between counting the headers or not. But if you're looking at the column that starts with Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer, we just solved the second one there. The first one was Cain or Papa and Teku Mar Sutra. Second one was Cain that we just saw now. Now we're at the next one, Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer, Ma'ashim Kal v'chomer. Something that's learned out of a Kal v'chomer. Can Kal v'chomer go to Kal v'chomer? So we're really dealing with Kal v'chomer here. Now he says Kal v'chomer that it could. Why? In other words, we're going Kal v'chomer to Kal v'chomer. Uma Gzeira Shava she'ein l'meida b'Hekesh. Hekesh cannot go to Gzeira Shava like we saw yesterday, with Rabbi Yochanan. Malamed b'Kal v'chomer, right? Keraman, but still, Hekesh can go to Kal v'chomer like we said. Where do we say that? I'm sorry, not Hekesh. Ma Gzeira she'ein l'meida b'Hekesh. A Gzeira cannot come from a Hekesh. You can't go Hekesh Gzeira Shava, right? But what? But Rabbi Yochanan, but Malamed Kal v'chomer Keraman. But Gzeira Shava could go to Kal v'chomer, like we said at the top of this page on the third line. Davar Lamed Gzeira Shava, Ma'ashim Kal v'chomer. Yes, it could go. So Gzeira Shava, which cannot be learned from Hekesh. You can't go Hekesh to Gzeira Shava, but you could go Gzeira Shava to Kal v'chomer. So Kal v'chomer Alamekesh, Kal v'chomer, which could be learned from Hekesh, Mediterranean Shmuel, and it didn't Shi'alma b'Kal v'chomer, certainly should be able to go to Kal v'chomer. V'zeu Kal v'chomer ben Kal v'chomer. This is the Kal v'chomer, the son of a Kal v'chomer. It's a Kal v'chomer derived from another Kal v'chomer. Why? Because the first thing, because we're saying it's based on a Kal v'chomer. How do you know that Davar Lamed Kal v'chomer? You can go if A is learned, if B is learned out from A by Kal v'chomer, you can go from B to C by Kal v'chomer based on a Kal v'chomer. It's the Gzeira v'chomer itself, like we just said. Gzeira Shava, which cannot come after Hekesh, but kid could teach to a Kal v'chomer, which could learn from a Hekesh, certainly should be able to go to a Kal v'chomer. So it's a Kal v'chomer learned from a Kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, it's even worse than that. Ben Benoshel Kal v'chomer. How do you know you go there? Why? Because what did we learn from? He said, Marach Gzeira Shava, which cannot be learned out from Hekesh. You can't go Hekesh Kal v'chomer to Gzeira Shava, Right. Malamed b'kal v'chomer, but could teach kal v'chomer, like we said at the top of this page, based on a kal v'chomer, based on a kal v'chomer. So it's like it's like a triple kal v'chomer. You're basing your whole idea, the basic halacha of gzeir shava, which could teach a kal v'chomer. That's also a kal v'chomer. So you got multiple kal v'chomers over here. Ella says, don't learn it from there. Ella kal v'chomer, learn the kal v'chomer this way. In other words, we're gonna learning out that a kal v'chomer, you can go kal v'chomer to kal v'chomer based on kal v'chomer, but don't base it on a knowledge of a kal v'chomer, on the basic idea of a kal v'chomer that we said gzeir shava. You learn to kal v'chomer based on a kal v'chomer. Ela kal v'chomer. This is the kal v'chomer. This is your basic one. Uma hekesh she'ena hekesh. Hekesh cannot learn from another hekesh. You can't go hekesh to hekesh. Even Ravina and Ravina. The first thing we discussed yesterday in this discussion. Malamed b'kal v'chomer, but hekesh could teach a kal v'chomer. Metan rishmal kal v'chomer halamed, which is learned from hekesh. The Tanur rishmal, you can go hekesh kal v'chomer, and it didn't show kal v'chomer. It's soon should be kal v'chomer. The zel kal v'chomer ben kal v'chomer. This is right. Kal v'chomer ben kal v'chomer. In other words, a kal v'chomer is teaching me that a kal v'chomer can go to a kal v'chomer, but it's not a triple kal v'chomer, because like Rashi said, that might be going too far. Maybe you don't go that far in learning. Okay. Now, so what does that teach us? So now, again, if you're looking at the chart, it's the in the second column from the left, let's say, right? Davar lam b'kal v'chomer. We just discussed the third box over there, the third box of the drush. It's not the header. That davar lam b'kal v'chomer. Can you teach there to a kal v'chomer? Yes, from the kal v'chomer behekesh, also kal v'chomer benoshal kal v'chomer, because that's a kal v'chomer noshal kal v'chomer. Now we're going to come to the last one that we're going to discuss today, which is davar lam behekesh ma'al shiyom b'binyan av. The last row in that second column from the left, right? Something that's learned out of a kal v'chomer. Can you then go on, teach that further based on a binyan, based on a comparison? And if you look at the chart, you'll see already it says lafia maskana. The question was not decided. Okay, let's see that inside. If you're lost your place, if this is too confusing, we're about 10 lines from the bottom of the page in the Gemara. And if B is learned out from A by a kal v'chomer, can you learn out C by a simple comparison? Listen to this. Let's understand the first basic halacha. There's a special halacha in the Torah that if you have a dead carcass of a carcass of an animal, that's matame you, whether you touch it or whether you eat it, you're matame. What about the nevela of a bird, of a kosher bird, not a non-kosher bird, a kosher bird, a chicken that died without shchita? That's called an nevelis oftar. If you touch it, you're not tamei. Special halacha, it's only tamei if it's in your throat. Somebody stuck it into your throat. You took a stick and you stuck it in your throat. That's how you're tamei. Nevelis, it's called nevelis oftar. Okay. Another halacha is that if you shecht an animal and it turns out it's treifa, it's treif. You find that it's got a punctured lung or something in there that would have died from. So that's not matame. The shchita is matire from even though you can't eat it, it's treif. It's a real treifa. What we call treif, which just means not kosher, right? This is a real treifa. You can't eat it, but it's not matamu. So he brings like, what about malika? Malika is when the Kohen pinches the bird, kills the bird as a carbon to the back of the neck. That's called malika. And that's only kosher and kachim. Tashma molek. Let's say he did malika on the bird, but it's a treifa, and it turned out it was a treifa. Rabbi Yirmiyah, I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Yeah, Rabbi Yirmiyah tashma molek and it's a treifa. Rav Meir eina matame beisabliya. Meir says it's not matame beisabliya, even though it's like an avela now because malika. Yeah, it's not kosher. It's like an nevela, but it's not really. Rabbi Yehuda Matam Beisabli says it's like nevela. Rav Meir says it's not like nevela, and it's not matame in the throat. Rabbi Yehuda says it is matame Beisabli. It's like an nevela. Rav Meir. So Rav Meir says, how do I know it? Kal v'chomer. I have a kal v'chomer. Uma nevela. Uma nevela speima shematam magamasa. A regular carcass of an animal, right, is matame whether you touch it or carry it. Shchitasa still, if you shechted it, mitaris treifasa mitamasa. If you shechted it, so it's not an nevela, but it's a treifa, but the shchita is mitar, it's not tamei. Nevelos oaf. She'enu mitam magasa. And nevelos oaf. Remember what I said? Nevelos oaf is not mitam magasa only if it's in your throat. And it didn't say shchitas mitaris treifasa mitamasa. Certainly, the shchita should be matar its treifa from being tamei. That's what Meir says, that if you shechted, if you did malika on a bird, first we're talking about a regular bird, not a kachim. He's talking about shchita, and it didn't shchitasa matar streifasa mitamasa. So here again, we started by saying molik minim streifi as a machlokas Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, whether it's tomei or tahor, the tomei or tahor, is matam besa believes matami in the throat or not. So first Rav Meir brought a kal v'chomer from regular shchita. Nevela v'beima is matame b'magamasa. Still the shchita is matarid. Nevela's oath she'ena matam magamasa. Even if it was really a dead nevela, a dead bird, it's not matam magamasa only by it's in your throat. And it didn't. Shchita should also be matar treifa mitamasa. Now that's regular shchita. All right. Then we go from shchita. We want to go to malika. Mamatzina. Now, so what do we have? Something is learned out of a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer that Rav Meir says? That madach what? Madach, a regular behema, who's metame, a nevela of a regular behema, four-legged animals, metame magamasa, but the shchita's metar, the treifa, it's treifa. If you shechted it and it's found treifa, it's not tame, it's tor. Nevela's oaf, she'ena metame magasa. Certainly the shchita should be metarid. That's shchita. Mamatzina b'shchita shemachshirasa b'chel is just like you find by shchita that it's machshir. And machshir, normal shchita is machshir, something to eat. Metaris treifasa mitumasa, and it's also metayr the treifa from the tumah based on the kal v'chomer, right? Just like by shchita, which normally makes something kosher. It also, if the thing that you shechted was found to be a treifa, it's tar now, says Rav Meir, and that's true in general. Af malika, so opinion also should also be the same. Just like malika is machshir b'achila. And let's say, what is it, machshir b'chila? Only a chatas bird, because an ola's bird is not eaten at all, right? And a bird kachim is either chatas or ola. Af malika shemachshirasa b'chila tetar tefasa mitumasa should be mitar tefasa. So you're learning out a binyan av after the kal v'chomer. The kal v'chomer taught you that what the nevela's oath is not. It should certainly be the shchita should be matarit, and then we want to compare shchita to malika, just like shchita normally kashers something to eat, and also is matar treifa from tuma. Malika should be the same way. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi Omer daya kenevelis behema Torah shechtas matasa v'lo milikasa. Well, if you're learning it out from an animal, you can't compare it. You could say all you could learn out is just like you want to learn out. You want to learn out from nevela of an animal to a bird, so say it's like a nevela behema Torah shechtas matasa v'lo milikasa. You cannot malika. So he disagrees. Rashi brings down it's really a three machlokas. Rav Meir holds it's kosher whether it's shchita or malika. Rav Yehuda holds it's not matar whether it's shchita or malika. Rav Yossi says it's only matar for shchita, not for malika. Okay, but the point is, do you see over here? You have a kal v'chomer teaching you that nevela's oath is not matam maga. Certainly should the shchita should be matar treifa. That's his kal v'chomer, and then he wants to go from shchita binyanav to malika. Says Gemara Veloi, it's not a proof. Hasm tahavi mishchita dechun kasin. What you're saying, Rashi brings down another girsa that it's even more than that. Rav Meir really learns that out not from this binyanav, but rather from a hekesh. It's brought down later in the Gemara. But he says basically you're learning out from shchita. Shchita is chulin, is not kachim. So again, he goes back to the idea that you're not learning it out from shchita. You're not learning out from kachim at all. Over here, A and B. The A is really the Ray is really chulin, not kachim at all. Says Rashi, and so if you look at the box, then the question wasn't decided. Would it be decided according to Rav Papa? Lo mishdebayin the Rav Meir malika b'kachim mishchita dechulin gamar have a melamed dechulin. The melamed is chulin. Uleman the lesser Rav Papa, the one that doesn't Rav Papa afagav. The lamed kodesh lav rayit, but according to Rav Papa, maybe it would be a rayit. The box doesn't tell us that on this chart, but the question was not decided. All right, tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, we will learn the last column, davar lam binyanav, and you see right away most of those are not decided. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, at this spot. Have a good day.
Yeah.